Hello, ACCES. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for waiting. I saw some of you here early doors, so yeah, thanks for hanging in there. We're going to be talking about collaboration, some of the challenges that we face in the kind of current climate for artists to collaborate, but also the infrastructure that enables artists to kind of rise. So yeah, should we throw it over to the panel? Like, give us some of your experiences, who you are, and how collaboration got you to where you are.
So, hi everyone, I am Kimberly Oxide from Mauritius. So I work in MOMIX, which is a music market in Mauritius. I am the responsible of the research and development department because at the same time I am doing a PhD at the University of Mauritius on cultural industries and languages, and I also teach at the university. So my role in collaborations is more throughout two previous years, is like working on collaborations and agreements with other music markets, like ACCES, the music in Bizo, Ayoma, and other music markets, and try to do like mobility of artists and other form of collaborations.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess White. I'm the founder, director of Akum agency. I'm originally from Australia, based now in South Africa. I work as an artist manager, as a booking agent. I consult to music festivals on programmation. I produce events, and sometimes I DJ. Collaboration is critical in everything I do. So for me, the way I look at my relationships with artists, I look at them as a collaboration, as a partnership where we're working together to strive to help the artists achieve their goals. And so that's the first collaboration. Then you're trying to find various partners from a record label, publicists, the studios, fashion designers, photographers, videographers, and then artist-to-artist collaboration. So from an artist management perspective, if there wasn't collaboration, it would be very difficult to do your job and to essentially help the artist's career grow.
Hi, I'm Sniper Mantana, CEO of Str8Up Vibes. We are an events agency, events management company in Tanzania. We believe we're culture creators and collaborators because we bring in a lot of talents across the world to come and perform in Tanzania. And in that aspect, you know, there's a lot of collaborations that do happen with local talents, you know, merging and synergizing cultures across Tanzania and the world through music and through collaborations that has led to more value as far as talents, equity as far as Tanzania and across the global markets.
Okay, great. Sniper, with such a big platform, how does the way you work enable artists to rise using collaborations? At what kind of level do you enter the relationship with them? You know, so our biggest, our strength is to, you know, organize activities and events. And I believe through events are big platforms whereby, you know, talents get to be discovered, and that's, you know, through events, it gives a channel for talents to develop, you know. So we basically organize these activities, and we are platforms. We organize these platforms whereby international talents and local talents, you know, get to merge and synchronize and synergize and creating value in terms of their business accordingly. And kind of the same question to you really, Jess. Have you got an example of where of one particular artist where you've seen collaborations help them rise at every level?
So basically every artist I work with has used collaboration to help them rise. But to pick one out, I would use Sampa the Great from Zambia. So Sampa has released 4 albums. The first album was a mixtape. The last 3 albums has all had collaborations. And one of the biggest collaborations that she had is with Angelique Kidjo, which the first collaboration was actually on Angelique's album, which won a Grammy 2-3 years ago. And then to kind of repay the favor, Angelique was on Sampa's album. And that collaboration came about because Angelique reached out to Sampa. So Angelique slid into Sampa's DMs on Instagram with, "Hi Sampa, I'm Angelique Kidjo, I'd like to collaborate with you." And so that wasn't like management reaching out to Angelique, it was artist to artist speaking. And like from my perspective, most of the artist collaborations from artist to artist happen with the artists speaking to each other. And then as a manager, you come in to ensure the paperwork is done and all the admin side of things. But a lot of times people are asking me how they can collaborate with artists I work with. And if they're an artist, I suggest you speak direct. You build that relationship with the artists on social media, you reach out to them, because the artist needs to have a synergy with the artist they're collaborating with.
So I suppose that goes on to the next point of that with you, Jess, actually, with Sampa. Have you sought out any particular collaborations for her? And like, have you done that also at a business level? So are there brands that you've reached out to, or other kind of more industry level stuff that you would get involved with?
So like, from the artist collaboration side of things, there's been some collaborations that I've helped with, and that was about accessing new markets. So Sampa collaborated with Blinky Bill, a Kenyan artist I work with, on Blinky's debut album, and that was like Bill had reached out direct to Sampa, and they were talking, but he was bringing me in to try to help it get across the line. And for Bill, it was about collaborating with Sampa because he really respects her as an artist. And for Sampa, yes, there's the respect there, but it was also about accessing the East African Kenyan market. Sampa performed at Saudi's Abu Sara Festival in 2021, and Sajava from South Africa was there. Sampa really wanted to see Sajava perform, and so they met, and about a week or 2 later, Sampa was like asking me about potential collaborations with Sajava, because obviously that helps with the South African market. So there's multiple kind of examples I could give, but for me, when it's artist to artist, it's about accessing a new market or a new fan base.
Okay, thanks, man. Kimberly, is there any areas where your professional work comes into collaboration with specific artist development and helping them with collaborations?
Yes, I think like I like to use my research perspective, like as an academic, trying to find like new structures to offer new programs for mobility of artists or even cultural actors. Because we are not only focusing on the movement of artists coming to Mauritius or out of Mauritius, but also to the cultural actors there, trying to do like more workshops or consultancy. Because sometimes it really costs to make a group come to Mauritius and having everything covered. And I think that we don't tend to focus more on the cultural actors that actually need also that collaboration with other cultural actors of other music territories. So I think like doing the collaborations through those agreements with different music markets help us to find other ways to reach other artists and also other cultural actors. Like for example, with ACCESS, they will propose us maybe some artists that we showcased to perform in Mauritius, and also we can see how actually people working in ACCESS can come to Mauritius and actually provide a workshop or consultancy to help also the cultural actors in Mauritius. And we can do also the other way around then. So thinking collaborations in other way and using my academic background to provide like new structures and new programs.
Do you think organisations like ACCESS and MOMIX can provide not just the workshops, but also the support to collaborate in real time at the conferences or at the events that they program? Do you think there's a possible curation and kind of business support there?
I think there is, but I think that we have to see like the perfect or the fit model, like for it to be possible, because we are talking about two parties with two different situations, either economically or politically. And to see what will be the most of it, how can we get the most of it for both parties? And it can actually take time, but we have to work on it.
And sorry to stay on you so long, but we were talking backstage a little bit about the challenges of mobility, of collaboration. Do you want to tell us a little bit more on your kind of thoughts around that and ways to help that mobility?
The budget, like the money to get for the flight tickets.
Yeah, the budget.
For the local transport, the accommodation, and the performance fee. Like sometimes in Mauritius we don't get that support from the government. So like in Tanzania, the government of Tanzania supporting ACCESS, we don't get that in Mauritius. And sometimes if we get it, it will be like even like 5% of MOMIX budget. And some of the main issue is actually the flight tickets. And partnering with airlines give you like 5 to 10% sometimes. And when you have like 15 to 20 artists, like internationally, this is not enough. And the artists want to come or want to go out of, in and out of Mauritius, but it is actually only the budget side. And the logistics can be working more because we do have cultural actors in Mauritius that are used to touring and doing the logistics in touring, but they are not ready because they didn't practice enough. And they didn't practice enough because there's not the money in it.
And a similar kind of question really to you, Jess, is when you're developing an artist and you think, right, some collaborations will be great, or another artist or organisation has reached out, what are the challenges that you've experienced, I suppose specifically around mobility and budget, in their journey to develop?
So essentially, in the early stages of an artist's career, when they're looking to export, the performance fees are usually not enough to make the tour a financially sustainable model unless you can access funding through collaboration. So there's various platforms that provide funding for artists to tour across the continent and internationally. And so there's first, you're looking at home, so whether it's Department of Sports, Arts and Culture from a South African perspective, National Arts Council, like, you're probably going to be very patient and be waiting a long time if you're just relying on those two funders. So looking at other ways of funding, so SAMPRA, SAMRO, the two CMOs have travel mobility funding for South African artists who are registered with those CMOs. Essentially, the requirement is they need to be registered and they need to have received a certain amount in royalty payments. and then they can apply for funding for production, for marketing, and for mobility, for touring. So as a manager, understanding the different platforms where you can access that funding. So Sam, who's a funding partner of ACCES, in 2018, together with IFAS and together with Ethiopian Airlines, we were able to tour a Senegalese artist called Ibaku through 9 African countries, 14 shows in 3 weeks. And it would have been completely impossible to do such a tour without partners like SESAM, IFAS, and Ethiopian Airlines.
And I mean, that's really helpful to know, I think. But what was the legacy of that tour of hitting 9 countries? Was it something that was, after that initial injection of cash and funding, has the artist gone on to, you know, the next level? Are they still touring, or was it just a one-off?
So with Ibaku, like, out of that tour, he has returned to East Africa, like, for a follow-up show at quite a large kind of festival called African Nouveau. So he first came through and did a show at Alliance Française, then the next year came through and did a show at a festival. Some of the South African artists that he met when he was in there, he's done studio collaborations with. When he was traveling the continent, he was making a mini kind of TV series where he interviewed different artists. So he plans to roll that out with the release of his second album, which is coming out early next year.
Great, so that was a lot of, he built some integrated tools basically while he was touring to document it, and I presume that.
So we live in a digital age, so artists need to have content. So for me, when I'm taking an artist on the road, I'm looking at how it can be documented, how it can be documented differently. So with Ibaku, like, he basically set it up as a TV show where he was the host and he was interviewing different artists in each of the countries he went through when he was touring.
Great, so artists really have to be content creators whilst they're on the road, you think?
Well, yes, like, and the thing is, when you reach a level where you can have a team, you might have that content team on the road. Ibaku was 3 people on the road, his VJ, his sound engineer, and himself. So the VJ would be filming the interviews, the sound engineer would be recording them, so between the 3 of them, they're able to collaborate to not only produce the show, but to produce a mini TV series which will be released in the future.
Okay, thanks. Sniper, would you say that the platforms here in Tanzania, including your own, help artists to develop but also reach international markets?
Yes, I would. Affirmatively, because I have seen across the years that we've been engaging in these exuberant activities and events, and we've seen talents like Diamond Platnumz collaborating with World from Nigeria. We've seen Jokes from Tanzania collaborating with Jackie from Ghana. Mario collaborating with Savara from Saudi. So I mean, at the end of the day, we fund these activities, fully fund these activities. These talents come to Tanzania, and our local talents get opportunities, to literally collaborate and grow in terms of their business is concerned.
And how do artists here reach out to you for those opportunities?
I believe I'm a very social person, and it's not hard to reach out to Sniper in Tanzania. So, I mean, I'm always one call away through emails. We are a very reputable company as far as Tanzania, and you know, we've invested heavily as far as the music industry in Tanzania. So, it's you know, with the social world that we're in, you know, through social platforms and so forth, you can always reach out, and we're always there to collaborate accordingly.
What are the kind of things you're looking for when an artist contacts you? Are there metrics you're looking for? Is there an audience? Is there a type of music? What would the artist that approaches you look like that you would take forwards? In terms of one that you would take forwards?
I mean, he has to have unique artistry. I believe we have to be very confident as well in terms of, you know, the kind of merger that these people are going into, these talents are going into, will definitely, you know, bring something that will sparkle change and will just be top of people's minds across the world.
And Kimberly, like, if an artist was to reach out to you, what are the things that you'd be looking out for in terms of saying, yes, we can work with you, we can recommend some support or collaborations?
Actually, I think it will be like, I will need the details, all the details of the artist, like the basic things like APK and like tech rider, to see if this will be like adapted to Mauritius. I'm actually working on the real events. I think, like, for example, for MOMIX, when we do like the showcases, it actually does not focus on only one style of music, like one genre, but different genres, and then to see if we have an audience for that genre of music in Mauritius. But since Mauritius is very diverse, with different like cultures and also languages, we do have like an open gate, even for genres that can seem atypical. And then I will just go with the team also and just do like a market research to see if this will work in Mauritius. I would just ask him first to just send me like his details, and then we'll do our market research to see if this will work, and then see it we will dealing with whom. Like if we are dealing with a music market, like for example, if I saw an artist performing at ACCES, I will not actually go to the artist first, I will go to ACCES first, and then to the artist, and then see how we can make the artist come to Mauritius, but through ACCES. And this is how it will be.
Thanks for that. Jess, there's part of your job that's kind of along these lines. It's very much A&R in a way. If you're choosing artists that you're going to help develop their career and take to international markets and develop them creatively, what are you looking for?
So, firstly, I'm looking for multiple things. From a personal perspective, I'm looking for an artist who is a good human, who has good communication skills, who has a clear understanding of their vision and has a strong work ethic. All of the artists I work with, I think, fit that. Secondly, when it comes to the music, I have to dig the music. I'm not going to work with an artist as a manager or a booking agent if myself personally don't enjoy the music. The music for me shouldn't fit into one box. From the moment of starting Akum, I wanted to work with artists that couldn't fit into a box. I don't want artists that can only be on one type of stage. Like artists should be able to be performing in different stages, different festivals. So for me, it's artists who have a diverse sound, who have an amazing live performance, have a social message in their music. None of the artists I work with writing songs just about like getting rich and girls and stuff like that. All of the artists I'm working with, their music has a social message. So for me, that's quite important. I look at the genres, so like I'm not genre specific, so at the moment I'm working with over a dozen artists, but they're crossing more than a dozen genres. I also look at gender ratio, so more than half of the artists I work with are femme, more than a third of the artists I work with belong to the queer community as well. So it's very layered. When an artist is reaching out, like for me, like for any of the managers in the room, we're getting artists reaching out every day. Like, and you don't have the capacity to work with every artist, but for me, I make sure that if an artist is reaching out, that I pay them the respect to listen to their music, give feedback, give advice on how they can pitch to a manager. Like sometimes, probably a third of the pitches I receive from artists is like, yo, my music's dope, here's the MP3. They haven't sent me the EPK, they haven't sent me a link to their Instagram, they haven't sent me anywhere near enough information. But I will go back to them and say, hey, thanks for your music. Yeah, you're dope, but can I have your EPK, or can I have a link to your socials so I can get to know you a little bit better?
Great stuff, man. I think there's a checklist in there that everybody can learn from. We're obviously missing an artist as part of the panel today. So if there's any questions specifically from artists to our esteemed guests, please put your hands up, come forwards with your questions. Yeah, and if there's any questions out there from the music managers, the industry, please shoot them over.
So while we're waiting for some questions, like there's a couple of platforms locally and in the region which, for me, like collaboration is very core in what they do. So Sadis Abusara Festival has each year part of its program Swahili Encounters, where they're bringing musicians from Zanzibar, and they're collaborating with musicians who are coming to the festival. And for me, over the years, it's always been one of my highlights of the festival, is seeing Moroccan artists on stage with Tarab musicians, with musicians from other parts of the continent. So I think looking at Sadis Abusara from an artist collaboration, their Swahili Encounters, but also their Movers and Shakers networking session, which is done in a very gentle, relaxed way, which allows that collaboration from a business level. Santuri, who are running a VR thing in one of the breakaway rooms, since the foundation of Santuri, like collaboration from the East African region, from producers, DJs, record labels, artists, has been really amazing to see. And also how they've put music education at the front of its activities, and it was great to see them be recognized a couple of months ago with an award from, I think it was the UNESCO, because music education is a human right, and Santuri were able to receive recognition for the work they've done. So for any of the artists in the room who are looking for potential collaboration platforms in the region, Sadis Abusara, Santuri are two really leading organizations who have the artists and the industry best interests at heart.
Yeah, and to double down on that, really, from my experience, I met one of the founders of Suntory at BASATA, just as I was starting a label 10 years ago. So, you know, it's a real fertile ground. Sniper, is there any platforms you'd recommend other than your own? Where do you look for talent?
I think my fellow panelist here has said it all. Honestly, Centauri and Saudis of Basara are one of the most iconic platforms as far as the region is concerned, and I would personally recommend, if there's any talents here, these are platforms that you need to go and attend. And as far as talents are concerned, there are a few things that I'd like to address. Through live performances, especially at home, talents need to utilize these spaces, utilize these appropriate platforms. As much as there are a lot of platforms are concerned, but artists need to as well invest in marketing themselves. They need to be marketable across all markets. They need to as well invest in building their brand identity, very unique brand identity, whereby markets across the world would be able to identify. And through Sautis, Abusara, Santuri, and I'd as well recommend some of our Str8Up Vibes platforms. You need to engage more, and we will always be there to support accordingly.
Okay, thanks. And Kimberly, have you got your ears and eyes open?
Yes, of course I do. And actually, I will tend to focus one more on the local scene in Mauritius and see what is happening there. Like, what are the popular places, popular venues, and what are the artists actually touring on the island or in other islands of the Indian Ocean. And then I will just go through the partnerships agreements with different music markets and ask them, so what are the artists you're proposing, or what artists do you think can be relevant to Mauritius? And then also through the networking of our connections, and just ask them, because I think that they actually have already the professional background to know what we need to do those mobilities, and they can help us more to see in their country like what is working and what can be working in Mauritius. I would just do it like that first, like local, and then like through the international partnerships.
Cool. I don't know if there's any questions yet. Yeah, we've got a couple. Gentlemen here. Can we get a mic too?
Is that for me? Hi, I'm Yusuf. Good morning, everyone. I'd be interested to hear what the panelists' thoughts on in terms of collaborations, artistic collaborations. I think a lot of us are very excited to see more collaborations within the African continent now, rather than looking only to the US or Europe. For example, you hear a lot of Swahili, Amapiano. There's a lot of collaborations, as you mentioned, with artists from Nigeria. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of collaborating with musicians from home. For example, in Tanzania or Mauritius, musicians from home who are more rooted in the cultural traditions. Like Ashake in Nigeria, he's bringing Fuji rhythms into his Afrobeat, and I think it's exciting a lot of people at home and overseas. Even here, people like 10 years ago, Professor J was collaborating with Jola Mwamba and doing hip-hop Singeli. There was Maasai hip-hop 20 years ago, but now I see a lot of it as being quite formulaic. And I wondered if the thought of collaborating more with traditional musicians, but still looking forwards with hip-hop and electronic and Singeli and so on, if this could maybe widen the markets for our musicians from different parts of Africa.
I mean, while these guys think about it, that's certainly something that forms part of the A&R of my label is to look at traditional roots, understand them, and try and translate them for an international audience whilst maintaining the integrity of the rhythmic roots. Obviously, being a UK record label, that then also raises questions of the ethical framework of how we do that. To the rest of the panel, have you got experience along those lines in terms of African musicians collaborating with African musicians?
Like we did have collaborations with, in Mauritius, some residencies also, or showcases of African artists to Mauritius for MOMIX. But those days I'm actually focusing more on how to collaborate other than mobility. Because I think we focus a lot on mobility, like trading of artists, but there are other forms, other ways to collaborate, and even like co-creation, co-organization, or co-production. So how to make the most of every single way of collaborating, and not only say, okay, because one anecdote is that one time we tried to do mobility of artists, so the trading of artists, and we didn't have enough budget to do it. And we just didn't collaborate. And I see that's not how it must work. Like, okay, this, we can't do the mobility because of the budget, so what can we do with a limited budget? So what are the other forms to think of collaboration and think outside of the box in some ways? And we're doing the same with MOMIX, for example. So we canceled MOMIX this year because of lack of funding. And after 7 years of MOMIX, but it would be like the 5th edition of MOMIX this year, we were saying because we're putting a lot of our personal budget in MOMIX, and this will not work on a long term. So we are focusing more on MOMIX being sustainable rather than getting it done. And trying to think more of other ways to still have MOMIX actions throughout the year and not having it like on a free day with a big budget that we have sometimes a lot of difficulties to deal with. So I think it's another way to think of a music market, not on a free day basis. And like all throughout the year, keeping the agreement active, keeping the collaborations is still active in other ways to make them possible, to keep actually the link between the different countries.
That's so hard without funding though, isn't it? So okay, please keep us updated with how you get on with that. Jess?
So, like, there's quite a lot of collaborations that are happening with like the kind of traditional indigenous sounds from across the continent. There's a platform based out of Swaziland called Collabo Nation, which is run from Bushfire Festival, which is one of the 7 must-see African festivals to attend. So Collabo Nation, in its first year, had an amazing collaboration between Mukumba, Zimbabwe's kind of biggest international export of the last 10 years, with Marina Laraba from Lesotho. So I think like both of those artists saw a synergy in their sounds and how they wanted to collaborate, and thanks to Collaboration and the House on Fire Bushfire team, they were able to do a studio collaboration which resulted in a single being released this year. So I think a lot of the collaborations we're looking at on the continent is in that kind of Amapiano, Afrobeats, Afro-pop kind of realm, but it would be great for artists who don't fit into that realm to consider how they can collaborate elsewhere. I was chatting to Steve Attenberry last night, who's part of the A Lost Man who are showcasing tonight from Ghana. And last year I was working on a festival called Folklore Festival, where we brought Steve and One Love to come perform. And while they were in Johannesburg, we took them to a jam session called That Tuesday Funk, which features some of South Africa's finest musicians on that night. There was Bakani Daya, Malcolm Gianni, Siyabonga Matembu from the Brother Moves On. And out of that, Steve met a house producer called Revolution, and Steve is going to be on 2 of his songs dropping this summer. Revolution is like a legendary house producer in SA, 15-year career, and so Steve is not only on there as a vocal line, but also with his traditional indigenous stringed instrument from Ghana.
Great, sounds like there's a record ready to go there. There was another question, right? Gentleman here.
Hi, Kobe Ankuma Graham from Ghana, writer, DJ, lecturer. So my question is to do with collaborations not across the region, but across, let's say, the size of the artist. So if you take an example in Ghana, let's say one of the hottest artists coming out of Ghana right now is Black Sherif. And one of the things that has helped to propel him was a collaboration with Burna Boy on a remix of his single, I think it was Second Sermon. So what I was wondering is, what advice do you have for, what is the kind of advice that is given to bigger artists in terms of who to choose to collaborate with? And I asked that in a weird way to kind of, because I know that there aren't a lot of big artists in the room right now, but I like to think that 10 years from now, some of the biggest artists would have been sitting in this room today. And so, like, what do they need to be aware of in terms of approaching bigger artists for collaboration?
That's a very good question. Has anybody on the panel got an answer?
So that is a very interesting question, because we actually dealing on generational and social status of artists to collaborate, like the gap. And sometimes for bigger artists, we said, okay, let's look for a young artist that has potential in his genre and try to use that to be more like popular, because the young artist has the popularity of the younger generation. Like, we actually focus on strategies and sometimes also on intuitions, like, okay, there's a good connection with that artist, so we can do something together, even he's a big artist or not a big artist. It really depends, actually. But I think it really is more about strategies, like about popularity, about experiences, and about, like, actually in Mauritius, it is how the population feels about the artist. For example, our traditional music is the Sega. And one of the biggest Sega group in Mauritius is Cassia. And if Cassia, since he has an audience of the adult generation, I don't want to mention the ages, so the adult generation, and you have like younger artists with new genre, new style, and new music, and they want to also have a more diverse audience. So either the manager or the producer, if we're doing new music, we say, okay, just go with Cassia because he already has this audience, and it would be good for you to also have an older audience and try to have like more listening, like also on radio, because the radio is more like for, in Mauritius, for the older, for the adult population rather than the younger population. So it's really determining like the criteria of what are you looking for, what are the objectives of the artist, and what he can do.
You know, in my point of view, I feel like you know, sometimes big talents as well, they need presence in other markets. For example, Black Sheriff, he's an upcoming, big artist in Ghana. So if you have a talent in Tanzania that wants to blow up in the West, they'll need to collaborate with West African talents. It'd be big or small, but they need presence. They need to be talked about. They need to be on top of people's minds. I would say a talent like Davido. Davido has collaborated probably in half of the African countries, with Zambian talent, Zimbabwe, South African, and so he is quite a Pan-African musician, So collaborations are very key, especially if you want equity as far as music and the brand identity is concerned. And as far as talents are concerned, they just have to synergize. And big talents as well, they really, really need different platforms as well for them to have presence. And as far as the upgrowing artists are concerned, they have to have very strong, innovative managers to always make sure that aggressive managers, like Salam, Diamond Platinum's manager, is a very aggressive person. If you want something to be done, he'll make sure that that is done effectively. So it has to be from the talent, from the management aspect. It has to be a collaborative effort to make sure that these collaborations happen.
I'd also just like, as a little final point to jump in on this, like I've A&R'd a project for UK artists, some of you might know, called Goldie, and with his music I looked at where his influence had got to and wanted to put some of my label's influence in there on a creative level. And like, as much as we chose innovative remixers and innovative feature artists, not all of them cut through into the original artist market, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I've worked recently with BCUC, who also have had an album in the last few years where they worked with Sol Williams and Sean Kuti, and neither of those tracks, I don't think, really reached the audience that was intended. So it doesn't always work, sometimes it works. Those features, it's kind of, if you can follow the creative line rather than chasing the numbers, then you're kind of more likely to be onto a winner.
I'd just like to add one point, so from the emerging artist who's reaching out to that more established artist, be patient, identify an artist that works with your identity as an artist. So if you're Maid Kuti, Femi Kuti's son, and you want to collaborate with Sun Ra or someone look at the synergy. If Maid Kuti wants to collaborate with Nicki Minaj, is that going to work? So try to find a synergy. Try to find a unique way to approach. One of the artists I work with, we wanted Black Coffee to remix a song, and we knew if we went through the A&R channels, it's too busy, it's not going to happen. But we knew that Nazi Black Coffee loves music, so we made sure that before the album was out, that a copy of the vinyl was given to him by a mutual DJ friend, so who's in your community who can help plug you. So this DJ gifted the vinyl to Black Coffee. The day before the release, Black Coffee is putting it on his Insta stories to his hundreds of thousands of followers. And then he DM'd the band on Instagram asking for the separates to the song. So we got what we wanted, but we didn't have to ask, because we went through a different way of building a relationship. And so then Black Coffee is asking for the separates to the song, which we have a link, send it to him, and within 3-4 days he sent through the first draft of a remix. And we didn't pitch, but we did pitch, but we just did it differently.
And that will no doubt save you money as well. It will save you budget because there's that natural collaboration. He's interested.
Yes.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Sniper. We're obviously running a bit late, so we're going to have to cut it off here. Any more questions, approach us out and about around ACCES. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Pete.